Thank you. Good morning. As I was just saying, we are at a disadvantaged location. Everybody comes to auditorium. In front of the auditoriums, they see pumped hydro, pumped storage hydro. This is where I want to be. And like one of our friends here also, he went and sat in auditorium 2 rather than multifunction hall 2. And then I just received an SMS from ADB Security. um, People who should be inside are actually outside. They're protesting. We have the NGOs protesting at the gates of ADB. So the main gate has been closed so that they don't just come in. And so maybe some of our um, people who intended to be here are being locked out. But in the interest of time, we will start this session. So again, a very warm welcome to all of you and a good morning to this session on harnessing pumped storage hydro for sustainable energy solutions. I think in this limited audience, we all understand the significance of pumped hydro storage. It's a well-established technology, commercially viable. And I was surprised to learn that it's been around since 1890. So I had to check twice to make sure it wasn't, 1980s, but 1890s. And why is there suddenly a renewed interest? So it's not a new technology, it's commercially viable. It's because of the variable renewable energy sources that have gained importance, and especially wind and solar, which requires increased flexibility in power systems. And you need storage to guarantee round the clock availability of electricity or electricity on demand. And innovative applications of pumped hydro can provide the necessary storage to complement these variable renewable energy operations. And in addition, it also provides other benefits, other ancillary services, which include frequency regulation, um, voltage support, load shifting, and system resilience, which help maintain grid stability and reliability. It has a long discharge duration, and its high power capacity can play a very crucial role in avoiding curtailment of renewable energy, which in turn helps to bring down the overall costs. And of course, because it increases the integration of renewable energy, it reduces emissions. So again, I was very pleasantly surprised to learn that pumped hydro storage has the largest share of installed global energy storage capacity. We've heard so much about batteries lately, but batteries are actually in the electricity system a percentage of what pumped hydro has. And that too has happened in the last 5 years or so in terms of batteries. So no surprise, the PRC has the largest capacity, around 51 gigawatts. And United States is number 2 with around 22 gigawatts of storage, and then comes Japan. What's very relevant for us in Asia in terms of this technology, India is looking at pump storage in a big way as it expands its renewable energy capacities. And also we have Nepal and Bhutan in the region, which have very significant hydro potential, much more than what they would need, and hence supply to the region. So there are great prospects for large storage in these countries in the coming years. So these were all the good things about pumped storage, but there are key considerations in its development. development. And these include technical, environmental, and social risks inherent in planning and designing these, and also construction, financing. So I'm very happy to see the composition of our panel today, where we are looking at, the social and environment aspects, the technical aspects. And again, all this would go nowhere if we didn't have good government involvement and supportive policies. So we have representation from the government side as well. And what are the key factors that the government needs to do is in terms of establishment of regulatory policy frameworks that incentivize the innovative operation of pumped storage. We need market mechanisms to facilitate its continued development and to leverage the existing capacity, the existing infrastructure, retrofitting it to meet the requirements of the evolving power supply scenario. And again, governments alone cannot do it. So hence, public-private partnerships also become very important. So Azim, I was not ignoring your participation in the panel. It's very, very crucial. And we really have a very, very well-founded panel today to address all these issues. From ADB's side, we acknowledge the importance of large hydro, including pumped hydro storage, in accelerating this clean energy transition. And under our energy policy, we can selectively support storage hydropower plants. Such projects should, of course, have a sound and robust environmental and social assessment. Bruce will speak about our safeguard policy statement later on, but it provides guidance on the identification, assessment, and management of social and environmental risks and impacts that are associated with these projects, and or for projects with dams and associated facility. So I'd like to say that ADB is willing to support borrowers and clients to strengthen their safeguard systems and develop the capacity to manage environmental and social risks to ensure that the projects are properly assessed and designed and meet both ADB's energy policy and safeguards policy. So in closing, just like to reiterate, ADB is committed to provide the necessary financing and support high quality technical policy advisory assistance for accelerating clean energy transition in the Asia and Pacific. And I urge you, let's together move swiftly in pursuing innovative and sustainable solutions towards a cleaner, reliable, and affordable energy future for Asia and the Pacific. So thank you very much for your attention. And I understand, and your applause. And I understand we'll now have a presentation. Right. So may I invite Mr. Joseph Ulmer, President Director, Regional Executive Asia, to make his presentation on the technology, right?
So try to be very brief and very swift. I think you see this room is the same like most of the hydro sites. They are remote, and wherever we have potential, we don't have demand. Hydro is where do I have to point? No. How do I move? Can you take the next slide? So basically, is hydro, when we deal about or talk about hydro, I think we have to talk about water, and water is one of the most scarce resources on Earth. And we need to protect from too much water. We need to have the proper water, otherwise we have no food. Of course, we can also harness it in many, many ways. And there you see basically from high head pumping and whatever, up to even recreation. You see it in today's Bloomberg, the lake, the very famous lake outside Mexico City is drying up and is getting even less. When we talk about the darlings of the world, is solar and wind, is beautiful baseload additions. Do they solve the problem? No, because we see in today's world, the duck curve becomes more and more beautiful. The spikes and downs in a day becoming massively more increased. And with this, we know the more renewable system, intermittent, dirty electricity is joining a system, the more volatile the grid comes, and we need to fix this. So when we bring these three wonderful things, wind, solar, and hydro together, we are able to create solutions for 24/7 renewables. And a pump storage is not really a generation system. It's actually a storage system and should also be treated like this. And I listed you here, basically the short-term storage, the mid-term storage, and the long-term storage. And they are all complementary. You cannot, my friends from Nepal, you cannot basically substitute one by another. Yeah, you need in a functioning system, you need them all. And here you see, yeah, sub-seconds. Yes, you can even blockchain electric cars for storage needs. Yeah, and you inform them today, my forecast is a negative electricity tariff. And please plug in your car and don't use it, and you get a free charge. But this does not solve the issues of a system because you need hours and days, and of course, also long-term storage. And there we end up again into two things. One is existing reservoirs where we could equip now the turbine infrastructure with runners which go from 0 to 100. They have a little bit less peak capacity, but the full range of these issues, coupled with maybe floating solar on it, like virtual plants. You run the solar when the sun shines, and you have your in situ intermittence. And for many seasonal plants, which capacity factors less than 70%, hybrid solutions maybe is a future, and it's an overseen opportunity for a short-term fix, because this you can do within a year, and you can add 1,000 megawatt on regulating power. So same issue goes on hybrid issue, existing reservoirs, utilize it for solar, but have a joint dispatch. Basically, you treat your solar like a virtual another turbine generator set. This is how you can optimize, because you can use basically up to a certain point the existing infrastructure. pump storage. Now we are on the pump storage of the pump storage. Technically, everything can be done. Why they are necessary, we have said. Are they able to be also environmental and sustainable friendly? Yes, because normally you are going to follow a sustainability protocol of the International Hydro Association. You can build hydros very acceptable. And the best of all, we have proven in Australia, if you go on off-river sites, or you at least use one of the existing reservoirs, like bottom you see a project in Australia is an abandoned gold mine, depleted. Upstairs is Goldistal, the other one is a photo from Japan. Then you are able basically to combine suddenly, again, this famous solar and wind with hydro and achieve 24/7 renewable energy. What is important on these issues? I think a pump storage, contrary to a hydro, normal hydro, is you need to establish your business case first. Yeah? Why do you need it at all, and how you are going to deal it? Most successful in the last recent years were not the traditional feasibility, design, auction, and tendering, were the systems basically of early contractor involvement, optimizing solutions for the actual needs. And what do we need from regulators or governments? Madame has already mentioned it very much, is you need to be able to monetize the intangible benefits, getting paid for providing ancillary services, and compensating for all the grid stability what is done. It's one of the reasons why pump storage in China, for example, is a grid asset, not a generation asset. You need to have the privileged transmission access, and you need to be able, again, with your grid operator to rely on the appropriate modes of dispatch. Okay, this is my conclusions. Optimizing solar and wind without pump storage will not be possible. We need to accelerate the approval and optimization cycles. And many countries in Asia have no proper tariff differentiation. It's also complicated. But all of these things are basically doable. And you need to find techno-commercial solutions, because technically all would be possible. Thank you. Nearly in time, and it was in cost.
Okay, so I think we'll move on to our panel discussion, and then we will sit here and invite our panelists. But I understand that Mr. Abhay Karne, Director Projects, Maharashtra State Power Generation Company Limited, or Mahagenco, India, would like to make a presentation. So it would be more convenient for the panelists, other panelists, to see this. So may I invite Mr. Karne to make his presentation, and then I would invite the other panelists and proceed.
Good morning, all of you. Thanks, Sujata ji. As rightly said by the previous speaker, this pump storage is remotely located, and that's why this multifunction hall 2 is also. But I will go through some of the highlights of India. I'm representing a state-owned generating company in Maharashtra. Headquarters is in Mumbai. It's called Mahagenco. And in India, on 30th May, we find the peak load of 250 gigawatt. And to cater all this 250 gigawatt, and which will be 6% CAGR increase, there will be up till 2030. There is a need to increase this renewable, and specifically talking about to meet the peak demand. And to meet this peak demand, this PSPs will play a major role. From Mahagenco, I would like to say we are having a total capacity of 13.5 gigawatt, out of which I'm running right now 2,580 megawatt of hydro. In these hydro stations, I'm having from 2006, I'm running a PSP near Mumbai. It's Ghatgar 2 into 125 megawatt. Also, I'm going to increase this capacity to another 125 megawatt. So we are having an experience of more than 16, 17 years to run this PSPs there. I think Andres is there always to support us in this particular scheme. The largest generating stations of hydro we are having in the ranges of Vindhyachal, that is Sahyadri. It is near about 1,956 megawatt. It's Koina generating complex. If we go forward, we can say at Koina, then Koina Damfort, then this PSP as Ghatgar. As ma'am was saying that PSP is 100 years old. Yes, ma'am. We are having a unit at Bhira, which is run by the Tata company, which is completed 105 years, which is running 40 megawatt, and it's with a PSP. It's near about 100 kilometers away from Mumbai. So it's really a 100 years old unit. What initiative we have taken? The government of Maharashtra as well as the government of India have come up with the policy to install the PSPs in the state. They have identified the sites, near about 43 sites has been identified. And some of the sites has been given for development to the national, that is National Thermal Power Station, which is a national agency for generation. Some of the sites are given to the specialists like SJVN we call, that is Satluj Jal Vidyut Nigam Limited, who are having a core competency in developing the PSPs. Apart from that, in state of the Maharashtra, we have a privilege that we have the right to refusal for all the proposals in Maharashtra. We have find out 5 sites to develop in the Maharashtra. Total capacity will be 3,400 megawatt. At the locations, one will be Ghatgar. It will be addition with the same reservoir, upper and lower reservoir, another 125 megawatt. We are identified 2 sites in near Pune in Maharashtra, where 4 into 300 and 400 into 400, total 1200 and 600 at Varasgaon and Panchit. Also, we are identified 2 sites at Kodali, where we can have 110 megawatt, 2 units there. So total 3,400 will be in pipeline. We are very much thankful for ADB, who have already in touch with us from last 4 months. The PPR is being submitted to the government of Maharashtra also for having support for studying all this. All the DPRs for this project will be ready within next 6 months. So one of the DPR we are going to prepare as a company of Mahagenco. All 3 units or 3 other locations, our JV partner, that is SJVN, will prepare the remaining DPR. The main challenges what we are having in this, Total identified sites in Maharashtra is 30,235. That is total 28 sites have identified. Out of which this 21 projects, that is near about 21,000 plus, will be on the river PSPs. And near about 8,900 plus will be on of the off river PSPs. This is the peak demand in the state of Maharashtra, what we have seen. The average peak demand is near about 28,000 plus. So to mitigate this demand, we need this kind of, to mitigate this demand in the peak hours, there is a need of this PSPs. In the year 2023, last year only, the government has issued a policy which is very much supportive for all the developers there. Also, we have to work in tandem with the water resource department there. So this water resource department and the energy sector, both of them has given a clear-cut mandate that what kind of projects you have to go ahead and what will be the responsibilities of each and every ministry there. What we have identified the locations, it's 4,500 plus. Koyna left bank project of 42 into 40 megawatt. The work, half of the work is being done. All the civil work has been done. But anyhow, the project was getting halt during last 4-5 years. But we are going to revive this one and there will be a PSP. We are going to add one unit at Ghatgar, 125 megawatt. Already 2 units are running in the PSP mode there. We have one unit at Kodali in southern part of my state, Maharashtra. It's 110 into 2. And 2 sites, Varasgaon and Panchet. These are beautiful sites in the hilly area. We are going to install there 4 into 300, then 4 into 400. Also, only last week only, we got a proposal from the National Thermal Power Company, which is the largest generating company in India, to have a JV for 2 of the units. Both are situated in Maharashtra only. One is Atwan 250 into 2 and Amba 4 into 200. As you are quite aware that the code of conduct was there due to election. In the ensuing board, we will get all these proposals clear. That is the NTPC also. So very ambitious target of 4,500 plus megawatt will be there in the state of Maharashtra for having this PSPs. The main takeaway, this flexibility, start and stop, I think everybody is knowing not to say anything more about what are the advantages of this PSP. But I think in the largest consumption of this electricity is in India. We will find a lot of industries in the state of Maharashtra only. Out of this 250 gigawatt peak, the peak at the state level, what we have seen on the 30th May was 30 gigawatt. So as compared to all other states, I think there will be a challenging situation in my state, in the Mumbai and the state of Maharashtra only. So these are the mainly takeaway from this. We are also encouraging, the government is also encouraging the private sector IPPs in this only. But as a state government mandate, we are also committed that we will complete this 4,500 megawatt in next 5 to 6 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me here. So we'll now, let me also invite Mr. Joseph Ulmer. In addition to our 2 speakers, whom you've already heard, we have Mr. Bruce Dunn, who's the Director of Safeguards at the Asian Development Bank. So Bruce, please join us. We also have Mr. Adrian Marston. He's from Oru, and he's the Southeast Asia Energy, Water, and Resource Leader. He's based here in the Philippines. And last but not least, Mr. Mohammad Azim Hashmi, Director, Office of Market Development and Public-Private Partnership from the Asian Development Bank. So Azim, please. So let me first, we've heard already from we've heard from, sorry, I'm not holding the mic properly, I was doing. We've heard from technology, we've heard from a generating company, which is looking seriously and has already got a portfolio of pumped storage. Let me ask Mr. Adrian Marston to come in. So the pump storage technology has been on the market for many years. So what are the differences in integrating pumped hydro into the grid between now and then? And how has the market environment changed? What's the difference between, say, a developing country power system and a developed country power system?
Okay,
Several questions.
Yeah, a number of questions stacked up together. So I think let's start with the difference in countries. So I think the first difference is in say more advanced, more developed countries, they've got a lot more data about when they need power. So there's a lot more strategic planning in our experience in what is being asked for. So governments are able to direct the market a little bit more as to what they're looking for. Whereas I think what we find in more developing countries is it's a bit more, say, private sector driven as well now. There's I think Joseph mentioned it, the private sector is identifying opportunity and they're looking to push to get it in place because they see the opportunity. So they're really driving for it as a totally commercial opportunity, as opposed to maybe a little bit more in other countries where they're doing it as more of a strategic change from their existing energy mix. And then in terms of you were asking about the change from now to then. So I think previously we were seeing that it was a very sort of they made specific agreements about times when they would run these systems, and there were things like the excess rate or the higher rates that were being paid to drive the use of the hydro and sort of compensating slightly differently. So, but now. It's not just those rates; it's just the base market is there for the pumped hydro opportunities to be viable for a longer period. So yeah, a number of differences as it stands at the moment.
If I may have a follow-up, so how does pumped hydro integrate into the grid differently today? Do we need additional policies and incentives in place to further integrate this into systems, or what's happening right now is sufficient?
I think there's probably more opportunity for the pumped hydro, but as I said, I think we see that developers are able to find opportunity now without having to be incentivized quite so much, provided there's a market there and there's an opportunity, they'll take it now. Whereas previously there was a bit more of a need to have a mechanism in the market to drive it. I think the important thing is the guarantees, because some of these schemes do take a very long time to develop. Depends on the complexity of them. Some can be a bit shorter, but they do take a long time to develop. There's a lot of pre-planning necessary. And I'm sure, as Bruce will mention, there's a lot of upfront study necessary to get these things right. So there needs to be a lot of to that extent, there needs to be a lot of guarantee that if a developer gets this thing through the front stages, that they've got the opportunity still there. So yeah, I think those are some of the differences. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let me at this point turn to Mr. Ulmer. Mr. Ulmer, further to your presentation, I have a relatively short question for you. So what are your recommendations? So we heard that we heard Mr. Harne say that Maharashtra government is very interested and it's a priority for them to look at pumped hydro. So what's your recommendation to governments in terms of initial steps required in planning for a pumped hydro project?
This is a short question. Actually, you could talk a lifetime about this. Yeah, the reality is you need to forecast your grid requirements. Yeah, so the transmission line work and the input of the energy mix, what you are going to put into your transmission lines, the distances and impedances of transmission lines, and then basically you can, out of the energy mix, traditionally it was thermal overcapacity or nuclear overcapacity that you had pump storage. Nowadays, you have variable energy additions, which are intermittent. And with this, you need this very fast possibility to regulate your grid. Otherwise, you have brownouts or blackouts. So this has very much changed, but if you add 10%, you need so much megawatt on pump storage. If you add 50% to your grid, you would need different figures. And these numbers, because they are based on the failures we all have done in the developed world, yeah, Denmark, Germany, France, Austria, yeah, is the difference and the learning, but it seems everybody needs to make these failures, yeah. So we actually, the world would know it, yeah, what needs to be done and how needs to be done, yeah.
Let me pursue a little bit on that. Once they determine what's the mix required, what else needs to be done in addition to this?
You see, when we go on different generation mix, and here in Asia we don't run into a transformation because we are still in many markets growing. We are going into a renewable energy addition, which basically will reduce the percentage of thermal power plants. Yeah, Australia goes massively. Everything will be solar and wind. Of course, they have the advantage of 60% capacity factors of solar, and in certain areas also wind over 50. Yeah, it's very seldom. But this you can only do when you add hydro for long-term storage. Yeah, Australia, they call it deep storage. Yeah, they also have batteries, short-term storage. They might have in the medium term also ammonia or hydrogen in certain areas. And they have pump storage basically for the long-term issue. Yeah, so this is the planning depends where you want to go. Yeah, and I think Maharashtra has a very clear plan where they want to go, what is their thermal mix, and from that they know exactly what storage capacity they need and what options they have. Yeah, and I like to see these things like Panchets or Koina, and these are plants what we delivered 50 years ago, and then now are going to be revived. Yeah, which is beautiful to see because hydro has been a forgotten beauty. Yeah, nobody has seen it, and suddenly, because of solar and wind, intermittence, hydro becomes important again. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And let me now turn to Bruce. Bruce, again, we've heard a lot of positive things, and with adequate planning or systems planning, we can get hydro. But meeting these social environmental safeguard requirements, both as per the national regulations and laws, as also that of lenders like ADB, it's one of a key challenge in general for hydropower development. So how does ADB, as a major lender in the region, look at these safeguard requirements, and what advice would you give to the community here, which is clearly interested in pumped hydro storage?
Right.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sujata, and thank you very much, everyone, for the opportunity to be with you here today. The first thing I would just want to say is that, Sujata, you mentioned about the protest and the civil society organizations outside. It's a shame that, some of those representatives are not here. What they might be voicing out there is often concerns of local communities around environmental and social impacts, or perhaps that we're not being strategic in the planning of various different energy options. And of course, we're hearing here in the panel already, the importance of hydropower, how pumped hydro can play an important role in the grid and the need for grid stability. And of course, the need for, long-term planning, looking at how demand will change, various different energy options, all of that is important. But what we often see as one of the critical constraints is looking at the environmental and social considerations, and particularly how we do that at a very early stage. I think that is really one of the challenges. And it's actually something, just to give a call out to some of my colleagues, some of my team is actually at the moment, we've been reviewing this because ADB, of course, has had a lot of experience working in the hydropower sector over the years, not as much in pump storage. I think that's something that's evolving. But just to speak a little bit about some of those lessons, we've been working on putting a bit of a brief together, and I'll give a call out to one of my colleagues, Emma Marsden, at the back of the room. Emma, you've been helping us to look at some of these challenges. So I'll speak with some of my views, but it's informed by what we're hearing from actually colleagues from a range of projects. So three things, just to emphasize quickly. Firstly, the really early strategic engagement looking at environmental and social opportunities as well as constraints is really critical. So those engagements that are being done at the moment, various different countries, river basin planning that is looking at the potential for hydropower. We really need early stage engagement to look at the strategic environmental and social opportunities and risks. Now, this is something that ADB does advocate through our policy framework, like other MDBs. It's seldom used, though, I would say. I was involved personally almost 20 years ago, maybe showing a little bit my age and grey hair. ADB in Vietnam was looking to invest in the Sông Bung 4 hydropower project. That was in the Vu Gia Tu Bon River Basin in central Vietnam. That was one project. It was a large hydropower project, but in a river basin where there were more than 60 hydropower projects being planned. And that was a basin that was only 50 kilometers from the headwaters down to the sea. So there's a lot of competition for water, obviously, in that area, and a lot of concerns from local communities and ethnic minorities. So, that engagement was extremely important for us. What we identified was it wasn't necessarily that project was the constraint, but there was conflicts around availability of water, drinking water, water for agriculture and irrigation, impacts on fisheries, livelihoods, etc. So strategic environmental and social engagement assessment at an early stage can really play a role in looking at those issues to feed into your master planning processes. So that would be something I want to emphasize. The second is the baseline assessment. And of course, the earlier you can start that for individual projects, the better. But I have to say, in some of the projects we're involved in, it can come a lot later than the engineering work. Of course, that is important for identifying where the opportunities are and where there would be feasibility for investments. But I would say the baseline assessment needs to go hand in hand with that. And sometimes it ends up being a project risk when that is not done at an early stage. We see it, for example, in looking at downstream impacts. I think that's one of the challenging areas, or sometimes transboundary impacts. Biodiversity is another one. We sometimes get asked, why is it going to take 2 or 3 years to do a fisheries assessment? That's holding up the project. But actually, we should have started that 2 or 3 years earlier so that we were actually, well in advance. So I think that's a critical one. The other related to biodiversity, again, is if there are going to be impacts, if we've got inundation areas, we need offsets. Sometimes that's very difficult to achieve on the river that you're working in. There just may not be an option, particularly, you know, in some mountainous areas. We've been working in Nepal, very limited options. But there are other things that we can do. We can look at aggregate options. You know, we can take, say, for example, if you're going to be investing in a range of projects across the country, let's look at how we can invest in the highest priority biodiversity areas in the country, rather than trying to do it investor by investor, project by project, which can actually be challenging to do. And then the third one I mentioned before passing back, not using up all the time, just the early stakeholder engagement. You know, again, I can appreciate there are challenges sometimes in doing this while you're still planning. You're not sure where projects are going to be. But, you know, the community and sometimes those people that might be outside ADB do have a legitimate concern and right to be informed in an early stage. And are often, what I've found in some of our projects, are not against the projects themselves, particularly if they're designed to provide local benefits. But they have a lot of concerns. You know, am I going to be resettled? And if I am, where am I going? Will I still have a livelihood? Can my livestock move with me? If you've got indigenous peoples and customary lands, you know, am I going to lose attachment in my cultural heritage? Are my ancestors coming with me? Now, we've got some projects that have got good experiences with that. I would call out, for example, the Nam Niap 1 hydropower project in Laos. A lot of good baseline assessment that was done on social impacts and a lot of work with the indigenous communities there. That's been well documented. But on biodiversity, not so well. We're still struggling with the offset. So, you know, I think there's mixed experiences, but while looking back at the project's experiences, let's look at the challenges, but then look and see how we can turn that into good practices. So thanks, Sujata.
Thank you, Bruce. Very, very useful. I'm going to come back to you later, but in terms of what we can do further on this. But let me turn to our last panelist, Azim. Last but not the least, he's looking at a sector which can actually make everything happen and pull everything together, which is public-private partnerships and market development. So Azim, large hydropower and pumped hydro storage, these are very capital intensive. So access to finance in general and concessional financing is considered to be one of the bottlenecks. So how can ADB finance or support to mobilize, you know, public-private resources for such large projects? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sujata, and good morning to everyone. Very, very, very interesting question. You know, as some of the panelists would have heard, I mean, we have to go from billions to trillions in our fight for this climate change. And ADB, other MDBs, we just don't have the balance sheet. And so it is understood that a lot more private capital needs to be mobilized. To do this, well, I think there are a few steps that have to happen. And I think we are in a unique position to do so. I think the first is projects have to be developed and they have to be developed well. I think you know, well-structured project will always find investors. You know, I'll touch upon what Bruce said. When ADB goes in and does advisory on a hydro project, we look at it from a river basin perspective. We don't just look at it on a single project basis. That allows us to plan well ahead, because once you're starting your hydro analysis, one part of it is the safeguard aspects. The other part of it is the legal considerations. The other part of it is the financing considerations. So I touched on the safeguard concerns. I think the governments also have a role to play, and here, as an honest broker, we can reach out to the government because they know we're there in a long-term relationship with them. Some of the work that government can do is around the policy. What are some of the policy incentives that they can offer, whether it is on certain concessions, as well as on force majeure policies, or policies which will attract in foreign capital. I think one of the key things that we see with the hydro investors is because no one hydro project is alike. One of the issues that you come across with is that each project will have separate safeguard concerns. We have seen in certain markets where costs of safeguards are an add-on to the tariff. So the private investors are not worried that if there is any additional cost with respect to safeguards, that can be passed on. That's one part of it. The other is protections around cost overruns, and of course not in a balanced way, because in a PPP you want to achieve the correct balance between the private sector as well as with the public sector. I think then the final thing is the financing part of it. We have been involved both in the public sector side as well as in the private sector side. ADB has a lot of instruments at its disposal. Some of those are guarantees, certain risk cover. I think the other is our commitment. We are balance sheet, that we are also going into the transaction. I think that gives a lot of investors as well as a lot of financiers comfort. And we also have limitations as to how much we can invest in a particular transaction. So when ADB goes in there, and the investors as well as the financiers, but most importantly, the government, our counterpart, they also know that the project is structured well. It meets a very high benchmark for safeguard, and it also meets a very high benchmark for sort of commercial risk allocation. I think one final way where we can help, and this is now where we are working with a lot with our climate change colleagues, is to actually see what carbon credits or what we can do with respect to carbon markets. Some of the others, I was talking to some of the panelists earlier. Hydros are very long life. They're for 75 to almost 100 years, right? A lot of the markets now we are seeing that they are monetizing. Their existing assets can be monetized not once, but twice or three times. That allows the government to get actually some more money, where they can do actually much more studies and can enhance their hydro or pump storage portfolio. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Very, very good last point. Something that one needs to take into consideration, look at additional sources of financing through carbon markets. So thank you for that. Let me now move to Mr. Harne. You've heard now all dimensions. You have a plan. What are the challenges you are facing as a GenCo, as the government, as a generating company, and as the government? And what kind of support you would need to expand?
Yeah. As rightly said, that India is a developing country, and the rate of the energy cell is very much important. If we increase only by 1 or 2%, all the consumers' agitation, and the government is taking care of all the deprived and the farmers, there is a cross subsidy that the farmers are getting power at a cheaper rate and the industries at a higher rate. When we are talking about installing or commissioning this PSPs, initially the capex for this PSP is on higher side as compared to fossil fuel, or as compared to your solar, it's on higher side. So definitely the rate of the energy, what the PSPs will have, will on higher side. As we compared this contribution of this, and if we come out of a basket price of all fossil fuel, then solar, then wind, and the PSP. This price should be affordable. That is one of the challenge what we are finding in the state of Maharashtra and India. We installed this 250 megawatt 2 into 125 megawatt Ghadgar unit in the year 2006. Although there was some landslide and we started later on after 3 years. It's running continuously from last 16 years. We have a barter system with the distribution company. Whenever the power requirement is there for the pumping, the distribution company is providing me power free of cost. And when we are running in the generator mode, it is being pumped to the grid. And whatever the operational and maintenance charges and the lead charges, what we are paying to the water resource department, that is only recoverable. A proper guidelines and proper framework for the regulatory matters, how to arrive at the energy rate of this PSP is the main challenges right now. We can have the power in the V hours for the pumping. Otherwise, we can have the option to have this renewable power also from solar for the pumping purpose, so that the overall tariff, what we derive from this PSPs will be on the lower side. That is the main thing. As you are quite aware that in India, we require the environmental clearances from the central government and as well as the state government. So environmental impact assessment and the clearances for the same, which is a time taking process right now. At least 1.5 of, or otherwise in some of the cases, more than 2 years are also required. Because collecting the data for 2 seasons, again submitting, and we are going to conduct a environmental public hearing in front of all the stakeholders in that particular area. What are the problems they are facing right now? How we can avoid the destruction to environment. We have to give commitment to them, and then only we can go ahead. So PSP, commissioning of the PSPs is not a problem, but I think it will have a time consuming process. Apart from that, the contractual issues, the technology issues, because in India, we don't have this PSP technology. We have dependency on all the manufacturers who are expertise in this one. Nowadays, what problem I'm finding, I'm running this 1 into 2 into 2, 125. Last 3 months back, we had a severe problem, technical problem. We had to contact Andrews and then Fuji in Japan. So talking to them, getting the problem resolved. Actually, I have deputed 2 of my engineers to learn Japanese. Within a 1 month, they got it somehow to talk some basic sentences. Then we contacted this Fuji and we get the problem resolved only in last month only. So that kind of problem at India we are finding, but I will say that a lot of support is there. We have to run this unit on a basic, a full load type of thing. But new technologies, what we have seen, Tehri Thermal, Tehri THDC, Tehri Development Corporation, which is working in the Uttarakhand area in the Himachal. They have developed a technology, they have taken a technology to have a variable drive kind of thing. And definitely for basically maintaining your grid, you have to run the unit in between the maximum to minimum. So that kind of technology we can also opt for this case. Apart from that, rehabilitation, if we want to shift some of the villages from here to there, that R&R issues is playing a very major role in India. And we have to adhere all the government norms and the regulations. And definitely this is a big challenge for us. Apart from that, all these stations will be situated in the hilly area. Some of the area is being declared as a forest area. So forest clearances are required for the same, and which is also a very time consuming job. I think these are the big challenges what we will going to have while we are fulfilling all our dreams that we will be having 4,000 plus of PSP in Maharashtra.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So part of your technical issues and challenges are good for Mr. Olmer's company. So if I may move to you.
They are partners with us.
You know, we are sitting in India since more than 100 years, and we have more than 2,500 specialists in 2 factories. One's close in to Delhi, the other one in Bhopal, and of course we speak the language. Yeah,
So no need to learn.
and also the dialects of Maharashtra. We can do this all, and we eat the same spicy food. Yeah, sometimes veg, sometimes non-veg. Yeah, and with that we are, and this I think is very important. It's not the supplier customer. It's a really collaborative issue with our clients, particularly in India. Yeah.
Okay, so you have a very rich experience in this particular technology in India and beyond. So, what are the typical errors you have observed that the government makes in making this technology more challenging or prolonging the whole process?
I think what are the typical areas governments make is they refuse to learn from failures. Yeah, and if you don't have made the failure by themselves, so this is the lessons learned from another country. It's most of the time it's excluded. I think the biggest issue of pump storage, it's still seen as a generation asset, and it's not a generation asset. It cannot drive a feasibility based on generation. It's a storage asset, and it helps you to take overcapacity when you were driving into a tariff net zero absorption, and supplies the peaking of the peak, the regulating power, what normally you would have to run with very costly open cycle gas issues. The biggest mistake is making somebody which you need to bring the overall tariff down, so perceived so cheap that nobody can afford to invest in it. And we are willing to share 6 to 10 times the price for chemical storage, but a hydro pump storage is considered a generating asset. Yeah? That's why so little are built. And India has driven this issue in a combination with their dispatch issue. In China, they built 25,000 plus a year since 5 years until 2030. It's a grid asset. Yeah. And you need to value the contribution, what the pump storage does for a grid and the decarbonization of the generation. And the lessons are there. What governments do, you know it, madam, they don't listen, no?
Thank you very much. So biggest problem, biggest mistake. They don't listen and learn from failures and
Because mainly also because they are mainly men, you know. If they would have more women, they would listen better.
So thank you. Now I can't, argue with that at all. I can just agree. Bruce, as we've been hearing, as you yourself said, that this requires early stage engagement, but the way I see as a financier of these projects, these come to us when they are very close to financial close. And very often, and as we heard from Mr. Harney also, that this takes too long. And, so what can ADB do, and I'm looking in terms of capacity building within the region that will not only help ADB projects, but to build the capacity of governments and address some of the constraints which Mr. Ulmer also raised. So how can ADB help?
Yeah, great question. And I fully agree. Often we do come into these projects at a late stage. And, I think large projects of this nature will require quite a range of financial sources. But until the project has got to a certain stage and you've identified what you need and who you might be able to go to, we're not in the picture. But I think there are a few things that we can do. One, as a sort of a value addition service for ADB, with technical assistance resources that we do have, is to be able to provide a service and support governments to do several things. One is, I think, some governments in the region have quite strong legal frameworks and capacity in place, but others do not. And I think that's a space where we can certainly support, making sure the regulatory framework and then the capacity to support both good planning, good assessment, and good implementation of any hydropower project is in place. That's sometimes where we see the gaps. It maybe has been prepared following national requirements, but then you start to bring in international financiers that may have other requirements that go beyond. So that creates a gap and then a delay. So we can certainly do that. The other is the capacity building. But of course, capacity building for what? Now, ADB has a policy, World Bank has a policy, IFC has a policy, commercial banks have policies. They're often different to the government policy. Again, that is a constraint. And then there are things like the International Hydropower Association. They've got the hydropower sustainability protocols. Quite good, but not universally agreed. Now, unless we can really converge and harmonize, and this will never be perfect, but unless we've got harmonization, what are we trying to build capacity for? Or when we come in as investors for a project, and I've been there. Just one example: ADB and the World Bank are working together in the Solomon Islands. A small island developing state, limited capacity. Sina River Hydro, yes, exactly. And many commercial finances involved, as well as the lenders. So it's good we're working together, but you appreciate the challenge. Everyone is coming not just with different policies, but different interpretations of the policy, and that is a challenge. So I think we need to converge on essentially supporting our clients with one clear policy framework that we can build regulations, we can build capacity, and then be clear during the implementation stage. So thanks.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point, whose policy, and let's harmonize and converge. But please.
But I fully agree, it should be one universal set with maybe even some variations, because Asia is different than Africa and different to South America and different to the Pacific and then so, but the top line should be very, very clear, and the top concerns are always the same. Yeah, and they are not only during the planning stage and the implementation stage. That's why I like the IHH very much. They're very much also during the operation stage. And we need to see this whole cycle. And when this whole cycle is functioning well with clients which are receptive, then their assets basically become more valuable with time. Yeah, because financially they are written off, but they are still able to generate. So this is where basically you make tremendous money. And this is the interest. And yeah, we have plants in Asia over 100 years and still functioning. Yeah.
I would like to take some questions from the floor as well. But before I do that, let me just turn to Azim and see if he has any thoughts based on the discussions, or Mr. Marsden, if you have any points to add, and very quickly from Mr. Marsden, please.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, I mean, I would echo what's been said by the other speakers. I've been involved in developing water resource projects, dam projects, and the planning component is absolutely essential. And actually, to an extent, it's getting more complicated because with all the changes in climate, hydrology, the complications are different. And pump storage hydro's got the problem that, or challenge that you're running dams up or reservoirs up and down, depending if they were developed specifically for the purpose, or they're in a more natural environment. There'll be a different set of challenges there. So that's something we see a lot of problems, and it causes a huge problem later on in implementation because there's often changes then, and that then challenges the whole economics and the timeframes, and that's when projects start to get into difficulty, and maybe some of the controls then get bypassed, which is something we don't want to see. We want to see it done properly. Yeah, as the others have said, learning from the previous challenges, which there's some very good examples out there.
Thank you. You had also mentioned the difference between developed and developing country systems being data availability. So how can developing countries address this?
It's a challenge we come across all the time, that the information is not available all the time. So you have to make informed decisions and actually, to an extent, trust some of the professionals involved who can make decisions and make estimates, and also like the concept of like adaptive planning as well. Think where things might be going, start to plan for it, build flexibility, and which is one of the advantages some of the old systems have had. They were built very big. Standards were very, very robust a few years ago. Now people engineer down and down because they've had the opportunity to do so. But maybe we need a little bit more flexibility built into systems to accommodate the uncertainty that comes with the lack of data.
Thank you. You picked up the mic.
Yes, because I don't like this issue. The developed world has all the data and the developing world has not. I have worked myself 5 years in India, and we have gone, everybody knows Greenco's 1,200 megawatt complex solar, wind, and pump storage. It's not variable speed. It's a combination of 6 machines, 200, and 4 machines, 100, and has a flexibility which is much better than even a variable speed issue. Here we have a cooperation that we meet 2 times a day, and all the progress out of the factories, the sites, and this is done by LiDAR drones and directly fed in a 5D PIM. In Europe, we don't do this. In the States, we don't do this. But in India, we have done it successfully, and they were able to build a power plant like this in 4.5 years. And not everything is Snowy Point 2. It's a very good example when you rush something too fast and don't do it proper. Yeah? PPPs, proper prepared projects, always will find money. Rushed projects will always be a problem, but they are not only in the emerging world. Yeah? There are problems everywhere. Yeah? And some of the learning curves of collaboration, new delivery models, and in the end, I think the developed world can learn from the emerging world. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, very relevant. And also a new expansion for PPP properly planned projects. So, Azim, any thoughts on from you?
Thank you very much. I think I agree. I think for hydros, as I mentioned before, basin level planning is very important rather than an individual level planning. It allows us to take care of a lot of issues around safeguards, and that that allows us to also and a lot of times I think the other thing is hydros will take time because you need at least 12 to 24 months of data. Hydrology changes by month. So I think these are the two extra things if I could add. Let's open it up to the audience, please.
Thank you. So now the floor is open for questions. Please raise your hand and a mic will reach you. Okay, so
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Yeah, I'm Dorian Mead from USAID. I have 3 questions for 3 different people, very quick. Maharashtra, do you accept non-Indian investors for these projects you talked about? The question for Voestalpine or Andres is, on the reversible turbine technology, it was also mentioned this issue of modulating. You need even more advanced turbines to do the load following for the renewable. Where are you in this technology now? And is the market, considering all the different projects that were presented with all the different turbine sizes, the obvious question is, are there enough suppliers? And is it a competitive market from the point of view of a developer, investor, or operator that I can get what I need? And the third question is for the ADB, and that is, how much have you financed in terms of loans to hydro projects in the last 10 years? Have you been doing more? And the question also on these pump storage, is it possible to get some of these projects out of the category A, or are they automatically category A, which, as you know, raises the entire bar for getting MDB funding? So those are the 3 questions. Thanks.
thank you. Can you pass the mic right behind you, please? Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, good morning. I'm Tala from the Coalition for Human Rights and Development. And I think you've also mentioned that some of our colleagues are outside in the action, and I'm in solidarity with them. I think the reason why they're not here in this forum is because there's costs. There's cost. It's timely to engage in these forums, but I think we have to listen to them because they're also saying very legitimate and genuine concerns. And also because I think we don't really have space in this forum, like even in discussions, we don't see affected communities as part of the panels or perspective of civil society to be reflected in these forums as well. So maybe I just also wanted to kind of say our piece in this session, as well as because we have been raising alarm as along with our indigenous and rural communities that we are partnering with on these large hydropower dams, because these have large scale impact on their land, their livelihoods, their culture, their ways of life, and not just tangible impact. I think colleagues, communities from the Tanahu Hydropower Project in Nepal have mentioned that there are intangible cultural loss and damage as well from the pursuance of the Tanahu Hydropower Project. We also see the killings of defenders that are opposing these hydropower dams, not just in ADB projects, even World Bank projects in the Philippines. We have that case in the Cordilleras as well. So there are inherent damages and harms that these hydropower dams face. And also on the note on the Nam Yep 1 hydropower project, you've said it as a best practice, but you've seen that 90% actually of the energy generated from this project is exported to Thailand, and the local communities don't benefit as much from this hydropower project, while indigenous Hmong and Khmu peoples have been involuntarily settled and displaced from their land for this hydropower project alone. You're also seeing there's a lot of hydropower projects in the pipeline of these multilateral development banks, and we also raise alarm on these. So I maybe just a question for all ADB and also all of its government and private sector partners here. Will you also acknowledge there are inherent harms and damages from the pursuance of hydropower dams in pursuing this kind of renewable energy? How will governments, private sector partners, the ADB ensure that the rights of indigenous and rural communities are upheld, especially their free, prior, informed consent, the right to say no to development projects as well, and also kind of make meaningful and inclusive stakeholder consultations with impacted communities? I think Bruce has already said that early engagement and early stakeholder engagement processes with the communities is important, but how will the ADB ensure that these harms are not, the communities, front-end communities to climate change and the just energy transition are not further impacted and marginalized? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Just very quickly on why affected communities are not on this panel. This was intended to be more like a technical panel, but I will let Bruce respond to your question. Let me now turn to the panel. Start with Maharashtra on non-Indian investors, please.
There is a query from your side that will the foreign investment can be allowed in this PSP project in Maharashtra? Maharashtra is having a 30,000 plus megawatt of PSP potential. Already the site has been identified, and not only the government, but from the independent power producers are also encouraged to take participant in this. Apart from that, all the government agencies will have a proper global tenders for all implementing all these projects, where all the technology partners from abroad can participate. In the CapEx itself, if you have a certain tie-up with any government or semi-government company or IPPs, then definitely all foreign investment is also welcome in Maharashtra.
Then moving on to the new technology and competitive market question.
The new technology is, of course, there is tremendous development in turbines. Everybody can build a turbine. The real differentiation is variable speed motor generators. This is where the high end is. And on the issue of fully feed or double fed generators, the big three can all do it. And I think who is the best, we don't know. Of course, obvious hundreds, but I think everybody else has a very similar technology. And so far, it has never been monopolistic, or I think there is enough competition. I'm 42 years in this business. The only thing which has changed is that our equipment have become cheaper every year. Everything else has become more expensive. Yeah, but when I consider a kilowatt price of Punched Hill some 35 years ago, and you consider pricing now, you would be astonished how the industry has come down. And will we further come down? No, because there will be no more additional manufacturing capacity. We see basically the hydro world is very finite and very balanced. Everybody has approximately 30%. Yeah. And this is a healthy issue, and let's see how it is. And how maybe we see also in the Inflation Act also some benefits for hydro, and maybe we see also new activities in North America also, yeah.
Thank you for that. Regarding the question on hydro loans in the last 10 years, I don't have an immediate number for you from ADB's side, but we are very, very selective in the hydro projects that we finance. With this on the category A and the affected communities, Bruce, the difficult question is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let me first start with the category A, and then I think that's a good segue actually to talk about community concerns. So, I mean, we don't have an automatic categorization system that says a certain type of project, a hydropower project, a road project of a certain size, etc., is any particular category. We really look at the potential for environmental and social impacts and risks. And I think the case is most of the hydropower projects that we tend to fund are larger in scale, and therefore they're multidimensional, and they have a sort of combination of environmental and social risks, and therefore they end up as being a sort of a category A. Of course, smaller projects, or when we were talking before about PPP, properly planned projects, you know, if the upstream work has been done, basin planning, strategic assessment, and you've identified areas where you're avoiding impacts to communities, you're avoiding impacts to biodiversity through good baseline assessment, then maybe the risks do come down. So I think that's, you know, those issues are tied. Now, thank you again for joining from civil society. And I do want to say again, ADB welcomes civil society here. You've pointed out some constraints in terms of cost. I've experienced that myself, actually, to say. I remember wanting to attend a World Economic Forum event. I wasn't invited, didn't have the money, couldn't join, but we actually collaborated with Indian academic and activist Vandana Shiva at that time, who was attending, to bring forward quite a few messages into the forum. So there are ways, but that's not the best way, right? So maybe that's something that ADB can look at through the energy team to say, organize a civil society forum in the context of the ASEF event, something like that, because those voices and concerns are very legitimate to bring into this forum. So that's something we could explore a bit more. But I'll just quickly talk about some of the issues. The inherent challenges are there. And as I said before, unless we have early engagement, and unless we design these programs as part of a just transition program, you know, no investment is by nature benign. We want investment in renewable energy of all sorts, but they can also have impacts to communities. So I think we have to bring that into the forefront of our planning and make sure that it's, you know, community focused, not just the investment outcome. Thanks.
Thank you. We are running over time, but let me give 30 seconds to.
It's okay. 30 seconds is more than enough. I think one of the issues also with respect to safeguards, and this has been done in one of the ADB projects, is we can also optimize design. In one case, we actually had a project which was upstream with a 3.1 kilometer tunnel, and we actually had to redesign it, and we ended up further downstream with slightly higher dam, but actually managed to get the same power output, but in the process saved about 200 families from getting relocated. So engineering, designing, or optimization solutions also exist to deal with some of these safeguard matters.
Thank you. We really need to wrap up. This has been a very interesting discussion, and I'd really like to thank all the panelists as well as the audience. Very receptive audience, and thank you very much. So a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. We will have, I think, closing remarks. No, I was just told that there would be closing remarks, but I'm being told that there are no closing remarks. So
For you.
Haven't you heard enough from me?
Madame, it's from you.
My closing remarks, big thank you, and like to say that ADB follows a very inclusive approach to all our projects. And when I said that we didn't have affected communities present here on the panel, but we had Bruce, where we look at the social and environmental impact, have very, very high level of importance in all our projects. So with this, thank you, everyone.